I finally cast my first successful resin bloom in this circular resin coaster mold. First, let's mix my resin for this project. I'm going to use a 2:1 slow curing resin mix. After my last few hit and miss attempts at blooms using a 1:1 resin mix, I decided to see if a low viscosity resin would change the way my resin bloomed. The window of time to hit that sweet spot was so small that either my blobs were perfect, but the pores were not, or vice versa. I decided that this was the next best step. My mix is ready, let's put it aside to degas for about 15 minutes while we prep our materials. I'll be using this circular silicone mold, some caviar beads, alcohol inks, some of which has been diluted with isopropyl alcohol, and mica pigment powders. To make the piping resin for the blooms, we will take a part of the resin mix and add some white mica pigment powder and white alcohol ink to it. The pigment and the ink both are heavier than the resin and create the bloom effect while the resin moves during the curing process. After preparing the mix, let's keep it aside to degas. Let's get started. I have made sure that the surface is clean. Now the next step is pouring the resin into the mold. As you can see, the resin is properly degassed and there are hardly any bubbles. This is the main advantage of letting it rest for a while. I'm going to let the resin rest for another 15 minutes. Meanwhile, let's get the piping bag ready. Some caviar beads to mark the center of the flower. Now I will add the ink to the resin. This is what gives a touch of color to the white blooms. We start with the darkest color to the center. This provides a background for the caviar beads. For the petals, I am going to use a lighter color. Oops, I didn't realize it was going to be so fluid. I wanted to drop the inks in a symmetrical way, but that didn't work. This is also the first time I am using diluted alcohol inks, and I must say they seem to be more well suited to the blooms than the more concentrated inks I used in the past. Previously, the inks would just lay in a single spot and not move much. It might have been the ink or the resin type or a combination of both. All I can say for now is this is the color movement which I was looking for, and it happened because I diluted the ink. The ring is subtle and I'm liking the way the ink has spread across the coaster, but the center has become too concentrated. Let's help it spread out a bit. My understanding of the bloom technique is that when the bloom mix is dropped, it spreads out and then it starts to gather with the alcohol ink in its arms towards the center. Now, it's time to begin piping. This is so exciting. I'm just going to go for a spiral here and then use a toothpick to break it up into petals. The resin seems to be floating well, so all looks good. I suspect that these drops will result in the whole thing being a little asymmetrical. I'm going to even this out. I'm just going to pipe a little resin in the center because I want to see how dense I can go with the layering in a resin like this. Let's let this rest for a while. Oh, it seems to be blooming. Now let's carve out the petals. As declared in other resin projects, this is absolutely my favorite part. Running the toothpick through the resin and watching how the colors create these beautiful patterns. It looks so stunning. The process is so therapeutic. This is such a small part. It's less than 1% of the entire work that goes into this, but it looks so promising. Let's look at how this turns out after curing it overnight. We are into the next day and I'm mixing resin again for the background. I'm using the same slow curing resin mix. Same steps. Let's put the resin mix aside to degas. Meanwhile, let's have a look at this. It looks so pretty and the colors are very subtle. I'm going to go with a traditional dark background but with a little bit of shimmer. There is some purple in the base color, so I'm going to add a little to the background to make it shine a little. This won't be a really dark or thick background. It will have a level of transparency. Let's pour our resin onto the cured bloom. I'm trying to scrape every last drop onto the coaster and then use a heat gun to make sure there are no bubbles. Let's spread the resin slowly so that it covers the entire surface. Now, let it cure for another day. The background has cured. It is translucent and you can see the design through it. But the purpose was really just to provide a secure backing and contrast for the bloom. So let's pop it out of the mold and see. Look at that translucency. The way the bloom petals look from the side is absolutely fabulous, and I did it! Ladies and gentlemen, this is my first successful bloom. I wanted to go for a specific look and it actually happened. It is so pretty. The resin has broken up and has this lacy effect, which is possibly because I used an alcohol base. Next time, I'm going to try the same technique with a pigment base and see where that leads us. Look at those blobs which I added towards the end. The caviar beads are nice and understated. The second layering I added towards the center is also holding the definition of all the lines even though they were close. The colors are also reined in nicely within each layer of petal. The asymmetry is visible if you pay attention to the edge, but the center and everything is great. All in all, I am very pleased with this piece, even though I can see how I can make it better. I'm loving the lacy looks on these petals and the caviar effect is pretty. There's this broken petal at the center, but let's accept that as a part of the process. Look at the transparency. I love it. This was my first successful bloom, and now that I feel I have a hang of it, I'm so excited and I'm looking forward to making more blooms in the future. I hope you enjoyed this video. Happy crafting and have a wonderful day.